This episode of the Gamerheads Podcast is brought to you by Seven Bridges Premium Gourmet Yum Yum Sauce. Enhance every bite with our savory blends of flavors, perfect for meats, vegetables, and crispy treats. Whether you're dipping, drizzling, marinating, grilling, roasting, or snacking, Seven Bridges Yum Yum Sauce takes your culinary experience to the next level. Get yours today and make every meal a gourmet delight.
Hi, I'm Celia Schilling from Yacht Club Games.
Hey, this is James from Megacat Studios.
Hey folks, this is Matt, aka Stormageddon from Reignite and the Fun and Games Podcast.
This is Stephanie from the Boss Rush Podcast and the Boss Rush Network.
Hey, this is Mark and Keon from Bunte Avond.
Hey, this is Sebastian with the ProNerdReport.com and the Single Player Experience Podcast.
Hi, this is Chris.
Mike.
And Garrett from Daylight Basement Studio.
Hey, this is Baron J67 from Level 1 Gaming.
Hi, I'm Jacob McCourt from the Left Behind Game Club, Crossplay Conversations, and Video Game Trivia.
Hey, this is Todd Mitchell from Code Right Play.
Salutations, this is Mike Carroll from Stroll Art.
Hey, this is Jeff Moonen from Fun and Games Podcast.
What's good, y'all? This is Adam from Respawn Aimfire.
Hey, this is Patrick from the Backlog Odyssey.
Hey, this is Rune from Runic Codes.
Hi, this is Andrew from Spalato Bros.
Hi everyone, Jill Grote here from the Indie Informer.
Hello, this is the Crypt Master, and you're listening to Roger You're listening to Roger on the Gamerheads Podcast.
And welcome back to another episode of the Gamerheads Podcast. My name is Roger. This week, I have a very special guest. My guest today is Whistler, the creator and artist on the tabletop RPG Rapscallion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I have been so excited about talking to you about Rapscallion. My oldest daughter is a huge fan of pirates.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And amazing. So when I told her about this opportunity, she just like lit up. It was pretty fun. So I'm really excited to talk to you about Rapscallion. But before we get into that, I think the audience should know a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how did you first get into game design?
Hi, my name is Whistler. I'm a little under the weather, so sorry if my voice is a little scratchy. But yeah, I'm an artist. I'm an illustrator and a writer. And I actually got into game design because for a little while, right out of school, I worked at a local comics and games store that happened to, and this is rather rare nowadays, but it happened to specialize in indie RPGs. So there was an entire section, like non-D&D, basically, is what indie means nowadays.
Yeah.
But, non-D&D section of games, and I found them really fascinating. I would pore over them if I had a break at work, and that was where I started to realize it was a medium to tell stories and to allow other people to tell stories, which I thought was really exciting.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm old enough to say that D&D was very indie when I was growing up.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. No, it's the tables have turned. D&D is very, very popular nowadays, which you like to see, of course.
Yeah.
In fact,
yeah, of course.
One of the things I do is I have a local gigs at libraries every week or twice a week sometimes, where I'll do kids D&D, and I'll run D&D for kids, and they are insanely popular because at the time, of course, when it first came out, there was all of this satanic panic, but now people are like, wait, my kid gets to like sit in a room with other children and learn communication and math and basic reading skills. This sounds amazing. So the story has really flipped on it.
It really has. I know. And I've always argued that, playing any kind of tabletop RPG, whether it be D&D or any other game, right? Like, it not only builds the social skills, but also critical thinking skills.
because you're put into situations where you have to figure things out, and there's not always a right answer to things. In fact, most times there's not a right answer to things, but it's more interesting to find out how you got to your conclusions, right? So to me, I'm like, why aren't more people playing? I wish more people were playing tabletop RPGs, to be honest. So
I totally agree. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So for those who aren't familiar, what is Rapscallion all about?
Rapscallion is an RPG, a tabletop RPG. It uses the PBTA format, which I can talk about in a second, but basically that just means it's a very narrative-focused role-playing game that features you, the players, as a crew of dastardly pirates on a great sea, having adventures and misadventures, and getting treasure and encountering supernatural, weird sea monsters and things like that.
Yeah, I love that. What inspired it though? What and why specifically the world of pirates?
Two things, I think. When I was in high school, and this is very, like backstories, I think, are not always very romantic. But when I was in high school, I had this group of friends, some of my first friends, and at one point on a whim, I drew a picture of all of us as pirates, and people
Oh,
really excited about that. I was going to this art school. I was in the creative writing division, but many of my friends
cool.
were either there or in the visual arts division. So we started developing a world together, and that for me was sort of the root of Rapscallion, was like that basic, like a lot of the very specific magical elements in the game come from that seed. The other thing that happened was when I was working at this comic book store, one of the things I really was excited to check out, partly because of this old story that I had in mind from my friends in high school, was Seventh Sea, which is another RPG that features pirates. And I didn't realize until I read Seventh Sea, which is a perfectly good RPG, I didn't realize until I read it that I had a very specific idea of what a pirate story ought to look like. And I found myself disappointed, even though, Seventh Sea had its own vision, that it didn't match mine, that it wasn't about this like crew that was that like were alone in this like grand sea where like 1,000 swords are being like put at their throats, and all they have is each other, and each other is not particularly trustworthy, but it will have to do. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
Yeah.
That kind of narrative was a little lacking. I think Seventh Sea focuses more on a sort of historical politics and swashbuckling within like that theater, right? So I went home that day and I started writing Rapscallion, essentially. That's where it came from.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, and one thing that I really appreciate about the game too is like you can make it as tied to real world as you would like. I mean, there's still some magical elements in Rapscallion, but if you wanted to make it that you are sailing the seven seas of our world, you can, or you can just make it a completely magical, mystical world. I think that's one of the things that I really appreciated about your game and how you designed it.
Yeah, I think it was hard to do. It's a fine line to walk, right? Because there are people who come to the book and be like, this is a toolbox and I'm just going to take what I need from it. And some people are coming like, I'm expecting a fully fleshed out world, and if it doesn't work out, I'll be turned off from it, right? So you have to strike a balance there. And one of the issues with that is that Rapscallion is quite fractal in its world design, which is to say, every time you start a story in Rapscallion, you the players, make the map together. So there's no canonical world in Rapscallion, like you said, right? So you can decide to make that map a real world setting. But the tools in the game are designed to like stoke creativity, like think of other things. So, but I still, you know, a lot of Our Flag Means Death was an inspiration, and so was Pirates of the Caribbean.
Love
These
that show.
yeah, came out after I started Rapscallion, so that was fortuitous.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what. But like both of those are, you know, ostensibly real world locations, but very divorced from like historical fiction, right? And that's kind of the vibe. Like Rapscallion can handle that. It can't handle something like, say, Black Sails, right? I think that's a little too historically rooted for Rapscallion. There needs to be some room for strangeness, some room for like mythology, right? Sinbad style pirates.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and let's talk about like when you're designing a tabletop RPG. Like, where do you usually begin? What's that first spark that gets things moving?
That's a good question. I think for me, it depends on the system that you're trying to make. But let's divorce it, because at the time I was experimenting with PBTA, which is Powered by the Apocalypse format. But that's not necessarily that's going to dictate some things about the game. But if you were to just start from trying to make your own system, I would recommend starting at the core of what the game is about, right? I think the more specific that vision is, the easier time you're going to have. I think a lot of people, and like D&D, I think, is very specific, honestly, in ways that sometimes people don't understand. They become so familiar with the system, you can sort of put some jank into it and make it like a political drama or whatever, but that's not really what it's made to do, and you're going to come up upon the boundaries of that space pretty quickly. For me, I think Rapscallion was principally about the ship and the crew in the ship and their bonds with each other and what that means, and the ways in which their vices as pirates pull them apart from each other and force them to like take risks and do dangerous things and live this dangerous life. And on a broader thematic level, it's about like how the law as enemy, right? As pirates, you are enemies to the law by default, and that needs to always be true. But that's like not necessarily something you need to enforce on a mechanical level. So on a mechanical level, it's the ship, it's the crew. That's why I think one of the first things I chose to do was create the ship playbooks, because the ships have their own character sheets essentially, and what that looks like and how that would work. You know, anyone who's tried to do like D&D but pirates knows that ships can be very finicky. It's hard to maneuver them. It's mechanically speaking. So that was one of my big things, as well as the bonds, which is like a mechanical term in the game. The bonds between the pirates and their vices, which is another mechanical thing. Those were the three cores of it, I would say.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think in what I read, if I remember correctly, like if your pirate leaves the ship, like they're kind of off the game, like because the ship is so integral to the game, right?
Yeah. I think that's. Oh wow, you're quoting the book. I'm so impressed. 100%. You know, some people won't really read it beforehand, and you can always tell. But you know, it's a lot of reading, so I don't care. But it's always nice to be like, "Whoa, you're like quoting the book." That's crazy. Yeah, 100%. The camera follows the ship. The ship is the core of the story, and if you aren't part of that crew anymore, then the story's no longer about you, right? That's the core of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned this before, and I want to ask a little bit of questions around this. So Rapscallion is built on that Powered by the Apocalypse framework. What made you choose that system over other systems?
I think at the time, it was new for me. I had only just encountered PBTA while working at that store I mentioned, right? And that was one reason I was like, oh, that's really interesting. You know, I really like the narrative aspect of games. I'd love to experiment with that. But the other aspect of it was the thing I was most excited by in a pirate story was that thematic element that I mentioned, right? And a lot of the time that's lost because the ship and crewing the ship and trying to figure out how to mechanically reflect that is so complicated and really distracts you, right? That's sort of the enormous amount of effort put into other similar things. Oh, what's it called? Swashbuckles, and there's a D&D version of piracy. I can't remember. It's got some kind of fun alliterative name. I wish I could remember it now.
Yeah.
But that's like the majority of what that's about is like trying to figure out how the ship works because it's complicated.
Yeah.
But I think that that's missing the point, right? You have to. That needs to be inherent to how you approach the game narratively. If that's true, then everything else will come out of it in a sort of snowball. So that's why I went to PBTA first, because I thought, okay, if this game is about a narrative aspect of piracy and trying to reflect a specific trajectory of character growth, if I am being that specific in my vision, and I think there is something of that, right? You're grappling with your vices, and you have to decide whether you succumb to them or whether you rely on your crewmates to overcome yourself. If that's what it's actually about, then I need to be that specific, right? That needs to be the narrative framework and the mechanical one. And PBTA offers that. It's a very, like, the narrative and the mechanics are quite married in that system.
Yeah, I like that. I know you mentioned some challenges, but what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when creating the game? And then on the flip side, what are some moments that you're most especially proud of?
I think the ship playbooks, honestly, were a big difficulty. And the ship mechanics in general went through, I think, like 3 or 4 iterations, 2 of which were like complete overhauls, like changing everything.
Wow.
Initially, and this is like, I think to my eye, this is evidence of my sort of amateurism as a designer at the time. I made the playbooks for the ship based on what sort of ship they were, right? Like a galleon versus a smaller ship, like basically a mechanical definition as opposed to a narrative definition. But I had picked a framework that didn't really work like that. So what we ended up doing was changing the ship playbooks to reflect a narrative arc the ship represents. So I think a good example would be one of the core book ships is called the Jewel. And the premise of that ship is that it's an extremely good ship, like one of the top of the line. It's a bristling Navy warship, or it's got some kind of magical power that's novel, or it's a submarine, like something crazy, something no one's ever seen before.
Yeah.
But it's not yours, right? You stole it, and the people who made it put a lot of effort into it, and are now really pissed at you. So they're like, it's a very fast and loose playbook that like encourages you to be kind of dastardly and also gives you an enemy immediately in a ticking clock until the enemy gets there. So like that's an example of like, to me, the ship playbooks are you can't decide what the story is about until you pick the ship playbooks. That's how essential they are. They're a glass in which the story is poured. You need to know the container first.
Yeah.
So that's
and gives.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh no, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was gonna move on to the parts that I was proud of, which I think are kind of similar. But you should say what you're saying first. I honestly, I think that a lot of the places that I struggled most are the places I'm most proud of, because if you feel like you've accomplished something that was difficult, it really sticks in your head more.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that one of the things that I like about the ships is that it gives your characters that reason for, like, a lot of times the stories have to be like, you don't want to hear a lot of backstory of the character, right? Like, because it's boring. But what's that moment that's like, okay, this is the moment that's why you're looped into the story at this time with these characters, right? And I think that the ship mechanic gives that to them of like, yeah, they're being chased down because they stole the ship. And I think there was like another ship where it was like, one of the things I really liked about it too is like use this ship if you want your characters to be like nobodies and they're trying to like find their ways through this thing, or use this ship if you want to be famous. And well, there's some things that come with being famous pirates too, right? Like that's one thing I like about it too, is like it gives you this framework around, if you wanted this style of play, here's the ship for you. If you want this style of play, here's the ship for you. I really liked that.
Yeah, I it's the tavern, right? To use the parlance, like there's a reason the tavern. I don't think it's a very elegant way of starting a D&D campaign, but there's a reason it's like a classic, right? Like, why do these guys care about each other? Well, they were all in a tavern. They all met there. It's like the start of a joke, right? But the nice thing about a pirate story is it immediately gives you a reason why they're all together. It's because they don't have anywhere else to go, and they're stuck on this boat. And, you need to keep the boat there. You don't have a house, So it's it's a very immediate sort of vessel for the story.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things that I really appreciate about the game is the different character playbooks. Can you walk through some of the different character playbooks in Rapscallion? And then can you also maybe highlight some of your favorites as well?
Yeah. So there are 9 total in the core book. And you can think of these like classes, right, for D&D, that's the system you're familiar with. But a playbook, which is the PBTA parlance, right, it implies more of a narrative journey. Like when you're picking a class in D&D, you're not picking the narrative arc you're going to be on. But for a playbook, you might be picking some of those elements, right? So, for instance, like each of the different playbooks has a vice that really describes what that playbook is about fundamentally. So the captain is, for me, for whatever reason, I remember the exact order I made the playbooks in because that was the order they were in for a very long time in the book. I think in the Ashcan, which is the original version, it was in a weird order because I had just put it in, and then eventually they were like, we should probably put this in alphabetical order, huh? And I'm like, I guess, I don't know, but it just makes sense in this order. So I might be going out of order from the playbook, and I apologize for that. But the captain was always first. The captain you don't need a captain in every story. If you're picking a captain, that captain should be, the captain of the ship. But it doesn't have to be, right? Like, a swashbuckler can be the captain or something like that. But if you're picking that playbook, you're picking a specific set of problems that a captain would have, right? It's very Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. You have this intense vision. You have this like ambition. You want to become a pirate lord, or you want a huge treasure, and unfortunately, sometimes your crewmates are in the way of you getting that, right? Like, how much are you going to use/abuse your crew, and how much are they going to take is the big question of the captain playbook, and all of its mechanics sort of revolve around that. You being kind of a schemer, the leader, but also a bit of a villain, right? We've got the Shuriken. I'm trying to be alphabetic here. Trying to get the Shuriken, which is the ship doctor, and that one can perform surgery on the crewmates, but their vice encourages them to go a little too far, right? They have maybe some mad doctor elements in there, where they have this sort of intense pursuit of like science and learning, and sometimes that puts their crewmates on the literal chopping block, right? And you can see like all of the vices encourage you to do things that are bad for the crew, and in order to ignore the vices, you need to spend bonds with the crew, like basically using them to overcome yourself. That's like the basic idea. Then there's the swashbuckler, who is a drama queen, is what I would call them. They're very good with the sword. They're very dramatic. They've got a very Inigo Montoya feeling to them. but they have these like the fail state for the swashbuckler. Obviously, you can die in this game, but the biggest fail state is that you'll look foolish doing it, right? That you'll look stupid, that people won't like you. And the swashbuckler is all about like the flame of their passion, bringing them to like making them messy, right? Making their relationships messy. You've got the navigator, who's the other playbook that kind of has a role in the crew. And the navigator has a piece of the sea inside them, is the idea, that allows them to like navigate these waters that are otherwise only madmen would understand, right? But sea wants it back. So they have this one foot in both worlds element to them, where they're constantly sort of being drawn to the sea like a siren, right? But they love the ship, and their relationship with the ship is very important. And there's this ambivalence there, right? Like, are they going to like allow themselves to be brought into the sea to save their ship, or are they going to resist, even though it loses some of their power? Let's see. We've got the chronicler. Let's see if I remember all of them. We got the chronicler, who is a book writer. This is a story where I wanted there to be an alchemy to the world, and that's very important, right? The alchemy of Rapscallion is that like everything's a little changeable, especially on the sea. Everything's a little bit there's no black and white, right? Science doesn't quite work because it's tempered by what people believe to be science, you know? Like things like humors and meridians and things like that. I wanted that to be an element of that. And the Shuriken has some of that too, right? That's like what their whole deal is. But I thought that in an alchemical world like that, a book, like if your very thoughts can change your appearance, right? If you're like, if telling too many lies like stains your tongue black, what would a book do, right? A book would be incredibly powerful. And I also was drawn to sort of the superstitions that a lot of sailors had around books and stories, that they were like, you know, spellings, like the idea that a spell can be, you spell out a word, but it can also be a magical thing. And so the chronicler is the playbook that creates books, and which is quite a dangerous sort of piratical profession in this world. And they their vice is that they want to escape into their books, to escape reality, and instead put themselves into their books instead. You know, that their vice is that they want to flee, right? They're a coward. Let's see. What else is there? There is the shiprat, and the shiprat is the littlest guy on the ship, who often gets into trouble. They're a scamp. Their vice is that they are greedy. They want to. They like to nick things, right? They like to steal, and often that gets people into trouble. In fact, we talked a lot about, when we were trying to design the shiprat, we talked a lot about Rocket Raccoon from Galaxy. We thought that was like a very, and it's not quite that, right? Like there's a sort of like ingenue quality to a shiprat. There's like a young person who smuggled theirself onto a pirate ship and is trying to figure out their way. But Rocket Raccoon felt like the correct sort of more villainous aspect of the shiprat, where they tend to get the crew in trouble because they like to steal stuff, you know? There's the Madalo, who is the biggest, the strongest person on the ship. And they are the ship's sort of protector until the thing that they need to protect them from is themselves, right? They have like a temper that allows them to be a weapon, and sometimes they accidentally aim that weapon at their own crew, right? And their vices are there's 4 of them that get progressively worse, where essentially they just get more and more pissed off the more bad things happen to them. And eventually, in order to clear those vices, you're going to need to hurt someone that you don't want to, right? The gunslinger is a similar concept, actually. Their vice is vengeance. I always liked the idea of a cowboy on the sea, but the gunslinger specifically is a sort of a dark. In fact, adding one to your game. This is true of all the playbooks, but adding a playbook to the game changes the genre of your story if you decide one. And the gunslinger is a great example of this because it makes the game a lot darker. The gunslinger like desires this bloody vengeance and is encouraged by their vice to act in ways that are increasingly cold and sadistic, seeing everything as mere obstacles to that final end. It's very a darker themes in that playbook. I think there's one more or two.
There's the demon one, right?
Oh yeah, the mountebank. Yes, the mountebank.
Yeah, it's mountebank.
Yes, demons exist in the world of Rapscallion. They're bodiless, so they need to have a body to possess, and the mountebank is that person. You've made a deal with the demon, and you get a lot of amazing powers from that, and that's sort of the vice of the mountebank is how much are you willing to sacrifice of yourself for some of that power. And if your vice is marked, that means that you're compelled to listen to the demon inside you. And in return, you get, powers over shadow. You get the ability to like summon skeletons and things like that. All good things, non-sketchy things. What else do we got? I should have kept track of these. I should have had a list of them prepared. I thought I could do it off the cuff.
Well, I think, I'm just thinking through them. I don't have it up in front of me either. I should, but I think you hit on all of them, or I feel like you hit on at least.
I'll look. I have the copy right here. I'll look and make sure. But yes, that's the basic idea, and you can see just from my description of them how much they're characterized by their vices. Obviously, all of these playbooks have mechanics associated with them. They get special moves. For instance, the shiprat is the only member of the crew who has a specific move related to like stealing things and hiding. There's other things you can use those for, but the shiprat is especially good at them and has abilities related to those. However, that's not like necessarily why you pick the shiprat, right? The reason you pick them is so that you have this ambivalence between like, am I a lovable little scamp or am I actually putting my friends in danger?
Yeah. And part of the vices too, right? Like once you become more powerful if you succumb to them, but at some point your character becomes like, I don't know, non-redeemable, I guess. Is that the word I'm looking for? Like unredeemable, right? Isn't that like part of the thing as well?
Yes. In fact, one of the main ways you gain experience in the game is succumbing to your vice on purpose, and facing consequences for it. But succumbing to them too much, it depends, right? I think some of them, this is the balance you have to take when you make a narrative game, because on the one hand, the narrative and the mechanics must be married in a very intricate way. But there's such a thing as what the designers call the fruitful void. That sometimes the most essential and important and tender part of your game cannot have mechanics on it because that would cheapen it. And instead, one must work the mechanics around it such that players are naturally funneled into that space and then figure it out themselves, right? The real magic, honestly, is the role play, what people are doing at the table. So that's the question, right? How irredeemable can you get in the game? Like many people come to Rapscallion and are like, I want this fun, jolly story about pirates, which is great, right? But if you are a gunslinger and you do desire vengeance and you like kill an NPC, one of the NPC crewmates in cold blood, what happens then? Like, is that okay? Can you come
Yeah.
back from that? I think with the gunslinger in particular, there are more tools in the playbook to talk about what happens there because the consequences are so dire. But inevitably, in all of the playbooks, the end result is up to the players, right? We can't dictate what happens necessarily. The closest thing that I did, I think, is with the captain playbook. There's an unrest track that the captain has, and the more dastardly, the more you screw over your crewmates, the higher the unrest becomes, until when that thing is full and all of your crew members are wild, which is a tag in the game, there's a mutiny. It's going to be a mutiny. It's going to happen. With the idea being, for the most part, especially with a captain playbook, you're going to have a large crew. You're going to have a lot of NPCs that you're commanding that might have their own opinions, right? So that I can dictate. But the PCs, I don't know.
Yeah. I love that. And you mentioned before we recorded there's some supplemental character playbooks as well, right? That you've been working on?
Indeed, yes. There's 3. There's some stretch goals. We did a Kickstarter, or a backer kit, excuse me, for the for the game, and they got a full 3 playbooks extra that are going to be sent to the backers, and I think will be available afterwards as well.
Nice.
And those are called The Witch. I think there are 4 actually.
Ooh.
The Witch,
Ooh.
the Sea Dog, the Fool, and the Fop. The Witch is a death witch, like a sea witch who can curse people.
Okay.
And is part of a coven. Very Calypso from the third Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Very maybe her motivations are a little at odds with the other group, but her powers are too intense. So the Sea Dog is essentially a veteran pirate. Starts out way more powerful than the other characters, but they're old, right? They're going to die soon. And that's sort of the question of the playbook is, how will you pass on your knowledge? What are you going to be doing with your crewmates before that inevitable end? The Fop is actually directly based on Our Flag Means Death, which came out shortly after I finished the first version of Rapscallion. Very Steve Bonnet. So the Fop is not a pirate, is someone who has found themselves in the piratical realm and has absolutely no idea what they're doing. So that one, like, as you begin to gain experience and scars and traumas, those scars and traumas may eventually cause you to like switch playbooks, right? And become a pirate probably.
And you know what's fun about Steve Bonnet, the gentleman pirate? That's a real story. The guy actually had a library on his ship.
Oh my god, yes.
So bizarre.
I looked into this afterwards after I watched that. I was like,
we did too.
God, I didn't realize how much of that was based on reality.
I know. I thought to myself, this has got to be made up just for the show. No, actually, that really happened. Wow, that is. And spoiler alert, he does end up getting in the real life Steve Bonnet does end up getting hung for being a pirate. So I mean, he's not a pirate very long, but somebody that it felt like somebody that had a midlife crisis that was like, you know what, I'm going to be a pirate.
Very much so, yeah. That's an option for the Fop. Most of the playbooks have different like narrative options you can pick. So for instance, like for the Madelo, the one who gets angry, right, who has a temper.
Yeah.
There are a couple of narrative options, like ways you can interpret that basically in the playbook. And one of them is like you can be a werewolf. Like that's an option, right? That's what your anger looks like,
Yeah,
so those are
yeah.
interpretations
that's
of the
cool.
character. And the FOP has those too, and one of them is just, the Steve Bonnet option, which is you thought being a pirate was very cool, and so you came out here and you have no idea what you're doing, right? Another option, I believe, is you've gotten kidnapped for ransom, but no one wanted you, so you're stuck out here. There's so those are the different, you want to find some specific narrative hooks that people will find funny, right, or find interesting. So that's the FOP.
And fun to play.
And then the Fool is probably the closest we have to a Jack Sparrow character, where the Fool has this kind of nihilism to them. Is sort of kind of a karma chameleon, can get away with a lot of stuff, but has this inherent hole inside themselves that they're trying to fill with various sort of physical vices, right? You have to pick one when you pick the playbook. Are you are you big drinker, or are you really into gambling kind of thing? How do you spend your days when you're not a pirate, and what are you distracting yourself from is the idea behind a Fool. Very sort of a sort of tragic jester type of character. And one of the narrative options for that one is very Jack Sparrow, right? You just lost your ship to a huge rival, your life is in shambles, what are you going to do about it, kind of thing. So those are the 4 supplemental playbooks. And that's awesome. I'm not sure when you're going to air this, but depending on when, they might be out already. But I'm currently working on them, so those are much more fresh in my mind, honestly.
Perfect. That's awesome. For somebody that's new to tabletop RPGs, what advice would you give to them before diving into Rapscallion?
Honestly, find a good GM and try to keep yourself open. Try to embody the character. This is a specific advice for Rapscallion and for PBTA games like it. I think the expectations are different if, for instance, you're trying to get into D&D. But Rapscallion specifically, I think, is actually very easy for new players if the DM is familiar with the system, right? Is able to bring them in, because in terms of mechanics, they're very delicate and very varied, but there aren't as many of them as in Dungeons and Dragons, right? You're not going to have an entire book of spells that you have to memorize. You don't have spell slots. You don't have action economy necessarily. So if the GM knows what they're doing, you can really settle into a PBTA game, and as long as you're earnestly trying to portray your character and have some creativity for different consequences that might happen, or are okay with rolling with those punches and yes-anding them, as long as you have those qualities, it's actually very easy to get into a PBTA game, because you don't have to worry much about the mechanics of it. In fact, there were 3 playtesters for Rapscallion. They had a 3-year-long game that went throughout the pandemic, and they were
wow.
Yeah, they were principally responsible for the game as it is now.
And I mean, it took you 5 years to make this game too, right? This is a work in progress for quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Part of that was, in fact, the pandemic, because I had this idea. Magpie seemed excited about it, but there was a paper shortage during the pandemic, so there was no real option to get it published for quite a while. But honestly,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, right? Easy to forget. But I think, honestly, it made the game way better, because it meant, the more time you have, the more you think about what could be improved. And this playtest was a great example. I think the people involved were all good friends of mine, but who lived scattered. One of them lived in China. One of them, they were all across the globe.
Yeah.
it was very, first of all, it was very personally fulfilling to have that during the pandemic, right? To like speak with friends long distance. But also, they were very narratively focused players. They weren't mechanically minded necessarily. And in some ways that was great because the game was going through so many different changes as they were playing that if they were more mechanically focused, it would have been hard for them to keep up. They would have been a little too overwhelmed. But because they were narratively focused, it felt very smooth. And they took everything in stride and did a great job. So that really encouraged me. I thought, okay, this is a game that a complete novice can enter without too much trouble. As long as they got that spirit, that sort of storytelling spirit to them, then you can handle it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, my final question for you then is what's next for you and Rapscallion, and do you have any plans? I know that you have the stretch goals that you're going to be releasing here, but do you have any other plans, any expansions, modules, or any new projects on the horizon?
Oh, I was going to say it would be too early for that, but the game has met a lot of success in sales. I think we're already on our second printing, which is very exciting. But because that's true, Magpie has been more excited to maybe release more content in the future, which will be very easy because chapter 9 of the core book, which for those familiar is primarily it's called the World Toolbox, and it describes just a bunch of tools that you as a GM can use for this game that has a modular story, right? Where all of the whims of character creation completely might change the plans that you've made as a GM, right? Like, how do you deal with that domino stacking? And the answer is, like, here's a bunch of dominoes that you can just, like, pull out of this book and stack tracks before a train style. And when I framed this to Magpie, they were like, that sounds great. Could you, like, write a bunch of those? Because I said, hey, if this is a modular game, why don't we have modular factions, right? You can, like, pull this faction out, and this faction comes with these different NPCs, and maybe this one will work instead, or maybe this location you can add, things like that. And they were like, great, let's do that. And so I did a whole bunch, and I came back, and Mark, the guy who is my designing editor and assistant, he was like, this sounds great. Let's bring it over to the people who are going to actually do the book layout. And the book layout people were like, you need to cut like 100 pages. So we cut them. And as a result, there's like maybe 6 or 7 factions that were left on the cutting room floor, basically. And so recently I said, hey, like, do we have any plans for these? I've just got them formatted and ready to go. They got pretty far in the journey of the book. And at first Magpie was like, oh, I don't know what to do with them. But now they're like, oh, we could like maybe have some kind of supplemental thing. No promises, of course. I don't know what that'll look like. But I'm hoping those will see the light of day someday. That'd be really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and meeting with me. This was really fun. I love hearing the creative like background and how things were created like this. And this was something I was looking forward to when I had the opportunity. And I'm so glad that we were able to connect and talk about Rapscallion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really an absolute pleasure. Sorry, my voice has been so scratchy.
No,
I promise it does not reflect my enthusiasm. I'm very excited to talk about it. And yeah, your perspective has been really interesting. Thank you.
Listeners, I'm going to put a link in the show notes. The game is out now. So I'll put links in there that you can pick that up from Magpie Games. You can also get a digital copy on Drive-Thru RPG as well. So I'll put links for those as well. And then Whistle, do you have any social media at all? Are you on social media at all?
I am in some capacity. I have a Blue Sky. I have an Instagram. I even have a Tumblr. Imagine that.
Okay.
And you can find me mostly on those under Art of Whistler, all one word.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
if you want to look me up, you can try. I'm not very good with the online stuff, but I'm trying my best.
Perfect. Well,
And
I'll
I
put
do
those
have
in the
this
show
song,
notes
if
too,
you're-
so that way people follow.
Yeah, if I do illustrations as well, so I've
Oh,
illustrated many
awesome.
other games that are not my own, and I love doing that. So
Oh,
if you've got a game out there, I'd love to illustrate or help. I'll help you at least.
yeah, and I should have like brought that up. The art in this game is really good. I love this. Is one of the things I love about when you open up a book and you look at the art. Yeah, I love the art. So it's really it captures like the magical aspects of it, but then also like the piracy. It's just so good. It flows. It just has like this flowing feel to it, like almost like water. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's just really I love
For
it.
a pirate
So
story, I think that's a compliment. Yeah, it's hard
exactly.
as an artist not to get a funner prompt than like fantasy pirates, so I can't really take credit for that. But I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Listeners, so yeah, let us know what you think of the show. Leave us a review. We want to hear what you have to say. With that, everyone, stay safe and game on. Bye.
Bye.